Hey guys, good morning. It's Joyce. Thanks for joining me here. Earlier this week, I was down in the southern array of my 4 county span that I cover for work. And instead of making the over an hour drive back home to return back down into the region again, I opted to just car camp, stay down there, and work on my clients, all the while taking advantage of the opportunity to stroll around a couple abandoned black cemeteries. Today, you're going to see 2 abandoned black cemeteries in the Daytona Beach area. One actually is in Daytona Beach. One is, I think it's technically in Ormond Beach, which is north of Daytona, or it's in Holly Hill. On a map, I'm not sure. Mount Ararat and Gethsemane. So anyway, let's take a look. Good morning. It's about 7:30 on Wednesday. I car camped here. Put blackout curtains up on my back seats, and I've got a what is that called? A tumbling mat. I lay that out. I'm sleeping there. Walmart is outside. I pulled in here about 11 o'clock last night. It took me a couple hours to get settled. All right. I'm going to go into Walmart and pee, and then I'm going to make coffee and move on. Good morning. I car camped last night. Had a client here. I'm in a different county. I slept at Walmart. Slept great, actually. Once I got used to the noise, I slept from, uh, midnight to 7:30. And left Walmart, went somewhere else, and set up my little Sterno stove and made my coffee. And now, before I work on my clients here in today, I thought I would check out this old cemetery. So this is Mount Ararat Black Cemetery in Daytona Beach. Mount Ararat is attributed with being over 120 years old. Very little info is readily available on this segregated place of rest at 1427 Bellevue Avenue in Daytona Beach. Public grave marker sites indicate 928 marked stones. This currently is a street full of cemeteries, and as I have found so sadly common, is this abandoned, segregated cemetery is surrounded by well-maintained, unsegregated cemeteries, making the neglect of this one all the more severe. There are 3 noted events unique to the history of this cemetery. On August 10th of 1937, a DC-2 Eastern Airline plane crashed into the high area of the cemetery at 4:40 a.m. Neighbors milking their cows were up and heard the crash, running to attend assistance as needed. Currently across the main street of Clyde Morris Avenue stands the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, which was the airport at the time. Lee Snell was a Daytona Beach native, serving in France in World War I, returning home, and running his own taxicab. In May of 1939, Mr. Snell was involved in a traffic accident resulting in the death of a 12-year-old boy on his bicycle, Benny Blackwelder. Lee Snell was black. Benny Blackwelder was white. During Mr. Snell's transport to the courthouse and jail, the sheriff transport was intercepted by Earl and Everett Blackwelder, the older brothers of the accidentally killed 12-year-old Benny. Armed, they secured Mr. Snell, who they proceeded to beat and lynch. At age 43, after serving his country and providing a successful contribution as a member of the community, Lee Snell became the second lynching victim in Volusia County in 1939. In May of 2020, the Volusia Remembrance Coalition offered stone cleaning and tribute to Snell's resting place here at Mount Ararat. In 1991, passersby noticed disturbed graves. This led to police and forensic investigations raising missing skulls in certain disturbed tombs. Sadly, evidence led to a few teenagers who had stolen the skulls for gold teeth. Mount Ararat was one of the only places in Daytona a Black person could be buried. Its location, the highest part of the southwest corner of Bellevue Avenue with Clyde Morris Avenue, was the western edge of town into the 1950s. Setting several miles away from where most people lived, surrounded by farms and woods. Getting a body to Mount Ararat in the early 1900s was an ordeal in itself in this remote area, especially for those lacking resources for a hearse or even car ownership. To add insult to injury, the city dump used to be across the road. It's estimated that a year's worth of earning to intern a loved one, combined with the hard work of those establishing this area, of cleaning and clearing the area, adds a whole new level of despair when one looks at the condition of this space now. Speculation and longtime residents place the origins sometime in the 1870s. A historical cemetery document notes its official registry in 1901 and was used up until 2013. Many early stones were either blank or have worn, raising the consideration that from to the 1700s into the early 1800s, several southern states, including Florida, forbade Black people from learning to read or write. The oldest gravestones stand in the northeast corner. The oldest legible stone, it dates back to 112 years ago. If there wasn't already enough degradation here, World War II training nearby at Schultz Field resulted in bombs being dropped here. Ordnance training. Well knowing they were dropping bombs on a cemetery as they trained a Black cemetery. Descendants have come together, taking back overall care along with offerings to the graves. Yvonne Scarlett Golden, Daytona Beach's first Black mayor, is buried near the entrance. Many descendants note stones have been stolen over the years, so they're no longer certain where their loved ones rest. I wish I could report that Lee Snell was the only lynching victim here, but he is not. He's just the only one with a formal stone. We cannot know where the others rest. Before, Ormond Beach was the birthplace of speed. Some Black folks in the community wanted to officially name their burial grounds Gethsemane, commemorating the Mount of Olives, which also stood outside the city proper of its city, Jerusalem. Black folks in those days were not permitted burial within the city limits of Ormond Beach, so this plot secured a distance from the city line on the wrong side of the tracks became their resting place. At one point, its name was changed to Greenwood, though the signs remain stating Gethsemane. A map query on your phone will show both. On the west side of Orchard Avenue, 140 South Orchard Avenue, and a quarter-mile south of Granada Avenue. The cemetery was closed in 1974 for additional burials. There are about 200 graves here, including veterans from various wars and slaves. One would tend to suspect that many buried here worked for the Hotel Ormond, the early racing NASCAR industry, or even perhaps John D. Rockefeller, who had a home on Granada across from the Hotel Ormond. The oldest visible grave is from 1870. Ormond Beach has an interesting Black history in that in the 1880s into the 1900s, a freedman colony was hosted here, known as Liberia, along the western banks of the Halifax River. Many immigrants from the nations of Liberia and Sudan then settled here as well. This pocket, bordered by Dix Avenue on the north, Selden Avenue on the west, and Lincoln Avenue on the east, can still be discerned by signs on these streets. Many markers here are handmade with unique embossing, shell mosaics, and handwriting. Several slaves are resting here, as indicated by the 3 links of chain on the stone. An indication of shaking hands marks both a passage into the next world and a welcome to the eternal. Unique here is the star embossing, believed to indicate, again, safe passage to one's North Star of Ascension or the Star of Life. Ormond Beach historical and descendant groups now offer regular public gatherings here, walking tours, and sharing of stories of the many here at rest. My intention in returning was to honorably walk the rows here, getting a glimpse of those stones that are protected and those that are not. Unfortunately, as sometimes is the case in cities, people in bad shape hang out around cemeteries. I lived in New Orleans for a while, and I learned the hard way not to spend a lot of time in the cemeteries, in certain cemeteries, because the tweakers hang out there too, looking for whatever they can find. Most of my walking here through Mount Ararat was unbothered. But at some point, a young woman came out of nowhere. I think she might have come out of the overgrowth and started following me. I was never in fear for my safety. She was just an annoyance, but it was very distressing and unsettling. So I had to cut my tour short, shall we say. Unfortunately, this young woman, after coming right up to me and trying to get anything she could from me, literally followed me back to my car. I had to rather quickly hop in and lock the door to get away from her. And then she unfortunately stood and screamed at me as I drove away. So, anyway, you will see the stone of Lee Snell, the veteran and taxi cab driver who was lynched by the older brothers of the young boy that unfortunately was killed in the car accident he was involved in. And you have already seen the stone of the first black mayor of Daytona Beach. So,
Well, life has nearly killed me, and my mind has put me on the edge. Life has nearly killed me, and my mind has put me on the edge. Though I can barely crawl, I've got to walk where these angels' feet are tread. Darkness nearly drowned me. Sunlight alone, don't it burn my eyes? Darkness nearly drowned me, and the sunlight, Lord, don't it burn my eyes? This valley is much too deep, and this mountain so very high. My cup is nearly empty. I got such a long, long way to go. My cup is nearly empty. I got such a long, long way to go. got to lay down here and rest before I can take another step down that lonesome road. Where the darkness nearly drowned me, the sunlight burned my eyes. This valley is much too deep and this mountain so very high. I gotta lay down here and rest where I can take another step down this lonesome road. Well, my cup is nearly empty. I got such a long, long, long way to go. Darkness nearly drowned me. The sunlight burned my eyes. This valley is much too deep and this mountain so very high. I gotta lay down here and rest where I can take another step down this lonesome road. Well, my cup is nearly empty. I got such a long, long, long way to go. My cup is nearly empty. I got such a long, 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 long